Just so everyone knows, this is being recorded. So just a heads up, if you would prefer to have your camera off or anything, feel free to do so, especially for those of you who are just observing. Just to start, we'll introduce ourselves real quick. My name is Fatimah. I'm one of the election co-chairs, and I'll let Chris introduce himself afterwards before we launch into things. We're joined by Dana this evening. She's the new click director. She's incredible, so she's here helping us out tonight with all Zoom technology stuff and all that good stuff. So Chris Linares and I have been the ones spearheading this entire election process, and we will be the point person for any information regarding senator elections, which are coming up next week, and anything at all related to that. So feel free to shoot any of us any questions via email or throughout this entire Zoom. Anything is fine with me. But yeah, so we will launch into things very quickly. I'll let Chris introduce himself real quick, and then we'll go ahead and introduce the candidates.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris. I am a junior and I am the co-election chair as well. And Fatimah kind of already explained everything else, so we won't waste time reiterating it.
All right, cool. So we're going to launch right into things. We are joined by our vice president candidate. We have one person in the running, Sarah. Sarah, do you want to just introduce yourself real quick? We'll launch into questions after that.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Sarah, or you can also call me Sushin, which is my Korean name. I'm a junior, double majoring in PPE and Spanish, and I'm from Korea, and I'm an international student.
Awesome, thank you. Max, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and say what position you're running for?
Hi, my name is Max Giarrusso. I'm running for president. I'm from south of Boston, Massachusetts, communication French double major with an econ minor. I'm really excited for the idea of having this position.
Thank you. Sam, you can go ahead.
Hi, my name's Sam. I'm from Chicago. I'm a PPE major, no double major in Spanish, and I'm really excited for this debate.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So the way that this is going to work for those of you who are tuning in, Chris and I have some questions that people have submitted ahead of time, and then some we have drafted. But also for those of you who are observing, feel free to message us any questions throughout the debate as well. You can either directly message me or directly message Chris with whatever questions you want. But yeah, so we will go ahead and get started. Chris, do you want to go ahead and start off with the questions?
Yeah, so our first question is, sorry, I was kind of zoned out. So did we do the first question?
We did the first question.
Okay, just making sure, sorry. I was texting my mom because she just texted me. Describe your prior experience, if any, with DCGA. This can include any resolutions you've drafted in the past, leadership positions in DCGA, if you were on any committees, or anything else that, like if you sat in on a meeting or anything in that nature. And anybody can go at any point.
I can take this one up. So I've been in DCGA for as long as I've been at Denison. I was a senator my first year, and I was the rules chair the second year. During that time, I've served on the food committee, and I've also served on the academic affairs council. So I've done a lot of work in improving, for example, international food in Slater. When I was part of the academic affairs committee, I passed a whole bunch of stuff like new classes, study abroad opportunities, etc. I drafted a bunch of legislation with Nathaniel Beach, particularly one that I'm proud of is the additional 2 days off for students for mental health without any explanation. Unfortunately, it didn't pass, but it's something that we're still working towards, sort of improving Denison's culture around mental health. I've done a whole bunch of little stuff. I fixed the clock tower over on East Quad through some work with housing. A bunch of other things that we could talk about at a later day. We got a camera in the elevator after talks with Laurel Kennedy, but there's no reason for me to drone on. That's been pretty much my experience.
So I've been involved with DCGA since my freshman year as a class senator. I've served on the finance committee as well as the rules committee, so I'm pretty familiar with the way that DCGA operates, having been a senator for 3 years and serving on those two committees. I've also been on the Campus Affairs Council, which is kind of tangentially connected to TCGA. and I served with Sarah on it 2 years ago. We worked a lot with Dr. Kennedy and the Office of Student Development to spearhead a couple different initiatives on campus. We spent the semester looking at blue lights and whether or not it's economical and a safe option to keep those on campus, or whether or not there's an alternative we can implement. And we also started a lot of work on the new social spaces, because that year, my sophomore year here, was the time where we started to transition away from hosting social events in senior apartments. And so we want to look at some healthy and safe alternatives to hosting social events. So.
Just like the first two candidates, I was in DCGA since my first year. So in my first year, I was a class senator in the rules committee. And then there I was able to learn a lot about how DCGA runs and what are necessary to make DCGA going. I was also in, as Max mentioned, I was also in CAC, Campus Affairs Council. I think Max covered a lot of the things that we did, but I think there I tried my best to not only represent the first year group, because I was the only first year student, but also international students' perspective, because oftentimes international students are kind of nervous to step up, especially because most of us are from halfway across the globe. So I think I tried to do that as much as I could. In my second year last year, I was the policy chair in DCGA. So I think I kind of drafted a wide range of resolutions, especially the one that I particularly worked on was campus improvements resolution, which focused on the safety and health of all students on Denison. And this year, I hope I could be the vice president representing all of you.
Thank you, guys. So our next question is a pretty broad one. We're going to start off with Sarah, since you're our only VP candidate. If you could tell us why you were interested in running for vice president this year.
I think there are two main reasons why I want to run for the vice president, because the first one is that I think now I feel like I'm more qualified to run for VP, considering the experiences that I had in DCGA, as well as involvement in other organizations. And second, I really want to represent the minority group that hasn't been as well represented in DCGA, because in my first year, when I first came to DCGA, I was very excited, but at the same time, I was very nervous, and I felt like there weren't as many resources available for students who aren't as represented well on campus. And I felt like if I have the confidence to speak up, and if I have the ability to do so, then other students might as well join later. And I think I wanted to be the first person to, just open that route for a lot of students on campus. So I think those are the two big reasons why I decided to run for VP.
Thank you. Same question for both of our presidential candidates. So why are you interested in being student body president?
I took the last one first. You want to take this one, Max?
Sure. So I think, I had thought about running for DCGA president throughout my time at Denison, and I've kind of found other commitments on campus, so I didn't put too much thought into it going into senior year. But over this past summer, a lot of different events that were unfolding nationally kind of made me realize that there's a lot of opportunity to help influence change on our campus, and having this position is really helpful in order to influence that change. As I said in my platform, I think that in unrest, there's a lot of opportunity. So kind of looking from a national scale and applying that to Denison, there's a lot of different things that our country is going through right now, and I see a lot of opportunity to create positive change from that. And I think that having this position is a really great way to kind of jumpstart that change. There are also kind of more specific things I'd like to change in the way that DCGA operates, because throughout my time at Denison, I've kind of seen a little bit of a deterioration in terms of involvement from senators in DCGA, and so I'd like to spearhead some initiatives to amend those problems.
Yeah, that was a great response. I think my response is similar but different. The main reason that I want to be the president is because I think I'm really good for the job. I think I have a lot of relationships within DCGA, within administration, that make me particularly potent in this position. I also think I have a really good outlook on what the problems that need to be addressed are, not just practically, meaning related to housing, related to food, related to COVID, which is obviously a great concern at this time, but also within the culture of DCGA. One of the things that I focused on last year was I really wanted to support the freshmen, and I think everyone will agree they were really energetic and did a whole bunch of stuff and did great work. I hope that is in part because I tried to provide some guidance. I provided them physical resources, and I hope to do that same thing with all of DCGA when I'm in more of a leadership position.
Thank you so much. All right, so Chris, next question's on your end.
Yeah, so I know like most of you guys just from your platforms have like primary goals that you guys want to like do while you're elected into office. Can you briefly describe some of those goals, maybe like your top 3 or something like that?
Sure, I can start. I mean, it's really hard to just say top 3 because I think everything can improve on campus, and there's no reason to like set limits on ourselves. If I had to list a few, obviously this year, a major priority for everyone is going to be the health and safety of the Denison and Granville communities. There is no higher priority because without feeling secure in your health and safety, there is no learning environment. And that's what our institution is. After that, I think it's also really important that we begin to change the entire culture of DCGA to be more visible to the public, so that we're accessible, so that people can use us as the tool that we really are. And so we stop becoming this sort of giant bureaucratic agency that's doing nothing but self-obsessing. And after that, just on a policy level, because those things are pretty broad, I want to change Campo and their relationship with students on campus. I have too many anecdotes to recount of people having really, really bad experiences with them. So I want to delve into campus safety, talk about their training, talk about their hiring process, what they're authorized to do, etc., so that everyone on campus feels safe, not just from a health perspective, but also from the dangers that can arise at a party, from racial profiling, etc.
I'm going to try and keep it to 3 things, but as Sam said, that's kind of hard to do. I think something that's a little tough to tackle in our current climate is the fact that there are so many issues that are of such importance on a national scale that a lot of these smaller issues get pushed to the back burner. I agree on a lot of things that Sam was saying, and I planned on touching on the same. I think that DCGA definitely needs a lot of reform, and I think that's really possible. And I think a lot of senators and students on this campus are open to that change. So I'd definitely like to get on that. I also want to kind of reiterate what Sam was saying about health and safety. I think in the 2 weeks that we've been here, there's been a lot of inconsistency in the way that the university's policies have been upheld. I think that that's putting a lot of students in really uncomfortable positions. There's a pretty toxic environment of students policing one another and stepping in where administration hasn't really met the needs of students there. So I want to make sure that there's more clarity for students on that. And I also would really like to work with the Black Student Union to help realize some of their demands from the list that they sent out to administration this summer. I've been talking to Giarrusso, who is the Vice Chief Minister of the Black Student Union, to kind of see what updates have been made on those demands and to see where we can help as a student government to make sure that their voices are heard by administration.
Sarah, you can go ahead.
Mm-hmm. As VP, I think it's very important for me to, first of all, support the president and what the president is doing, and then so I really I think I'm firstly going to support like what policies or what goals the president has. But then on top of that, as vice president, I think I'll be sitting as a part of committee on residential life. So I think the first thing that I should focus on is, as part of the committee on residential life, I should try to listen to the concerns that students have regarding residents, and specifically because I have an experience of living in Gilpatrick House, which is one of the special housings. I really want to promote special housing opportunities to students on campus, especially first-year students. and listen to other concerns that are possibly related to residents. And also on top of that, because I'm studying remotely right now, I think it's also important for me to look at what kind of problems, what improvements we can have throughout the semester for students who are studying remotely. For example, I think it's important for us to establish more opportunities for campus jobs because last year I had about like 4 jobs, but then now I only have 1 job because I wasn't able to continue a lot of the job opportunities because I'm studying remotely. But then I believe that that shouldn't be the case for a lot of other students who are studying remote, as well as like mentorship programs. I think it's very important for us to provide the same opportunities for remote students. So yeah, I think I'm gonna focus on those because I know that both presidents are on campus.
Thank you. All right, so we have a question that just came in. What role does sexual respect play within within DCGA, and how will you uphold senators to being familiar with policies along with safe zone training without them thinking that it's just another meeting and it's just another thing that they have to do? So whoever would like to can take a stab at it first.
Yeah, this is one of the things I mentioned in my platform that I'd like to work on. I think obviously sexual respect is really important to most students on this campus, if not all students on this campus. And I was kind of talking to another student, Nalani Ween, before I found out Sarah was running for vice president. I didn't know if anyone was running. I was hoping she would step up because she does a lot of work with sexual respect on campus. I think it's really important to have that voice in student government. But I do think that the way Denison currently operates, there's a lot of kind of education for like Greek life and other organizations, but I don't think that's always necessarily the most effective thing. There have been a lot of changes to federal Title IX policies that I think students need to be kept in the loop about. So I'd like to work with the Title IX office as well as a lot of the different organizations on campus like DCSR, and it's my pleasure to kind of promote different ways of educating sexual respect to students that are engaging, and it's not just like a lecture.
I can go next. This is actually a really important question. Obviously, sexual assault is unacceptable in any form on campus. I did Title IX training just earlier today. There was a session with Stephanie Jackson. She's fantastic. I know her pretty well. Max, you mentioned It's My Pleasure. That's actually an organization that with the Rules Committee we passed last year, so that got approved by DCGA, which I think was great for the campus and will do a lot for us. I think safe zone training ought to be mandatory. I think we should all go through the Title IX presentation, and there ought to be some consequence if that training is not taken seriously, if people don't show up for it. For example, we might offer a few instances of the training, and if senators don't show up, just like it will be a more extreme version of our attendance policy already. If they don't show up to those meetings in particular, it will count for 2 absences. And if you miss it entirely, then maybe you don't go, or you don't continue as a senator. Someone that takes that as a priority is essential to our governance.
Yeah, I remember last year there was a resolution related to safe zone training, and I really, really highly agree that this should be something that all senators should consider as the most important, one of the most important meetings, because obviously this is a very important thing. So I think, as Sam said, it'd be very important for us to reiterate that safe zone training is not something that we can choose to go, or something that we have an option to go to, but something that we should prioritize at most, so that senators are aware of the fact that this is the most important thing that DCGA is trying to deal with. And also, by doing so, I think it will allow other students, not just in DCGA, but the student body as a whole, to know that DCGA is upholding this as our utmost value.
Thank you. So I know Max kind of touched upon this a little bit earlier, but we're going to launch into student involvement, DCGA making DCGA a more comfortable environment. So the question is, how do you plan to make DCGA a more inclusive and equitable environment that students can trust, since that's been kind of lacking over the past couple of years?
Can I take this one first? Perfect. This was like my whole shtick. I love this question so much. I think involvement from the Denison community is so critical to DCGA. In fact, I value it so much that last year as a senator, I took a post in Slater every once in a while, and I would field questions and comments and concerns from people walking by. I had a huge poster that said, "Let's talk. You know, I'm your senator." This year, as a part of my campaigning for the presidential election, again, I took a table out front of Slater and I sat there for like 3 hours one of these days, just this week, trying to get questions, comments, and concerns from other people, because DCGA means nothing if it is governing only DCGA. It really matters what other people think, what different communities think. And so not only do DCGA senators need to be involved in those directly, attending meetings, going to events, etc., but we should also be doing some sort of outreach that is personal, that is talking to people around campus randomly, not your friends, not as a part of an event that you care about or want to attend. People should be able to go to you and know that they're that you're their representative. So my sort of slogan for my campaign has been "My platform, your policy." I really want that to be true. And I think that comes from senators being more involved by requiring attendance to different things and also encouraging them to set up their own opportunities to engage with Denison students.
Something that I talked with a few other senators about recently, and kind of one of the main initiatives I want to bring to DCGA is actually reducing the size of the organization, which might sound a little counterintuitive. I think if we can reduce the amount of class senators from 8 per class to 4, that would promote more competitive elections and kind of force students who are taking these positions to be held accountable for what they're doing. Because right now we're at a place where we're honestly begging students to run for student government. They're not that committed, they're not that interested, and it's really easy for students in student government to kind of step to the back and just show up for meetings when they have to and be passive and inactive when they don't, and just kind of check off those boxes. So I think by having a smaller governing body, I think we should keep 2 community centers per the designated communities, but just reduce the number of class senators will kind of help stimulate the student government. And I think that having a smaller body will help us promote more discussion as opposed to kind of getting up in Robert's rules all the time. I'd like to transition DCGA away from us being like representatives of the entire student body to kind of having us being students who give other students their own voice to represent themselves. So if we are a smaller group that's more focused on discussion, then we can bring in students. If they notice an issue on campus, they can come and work with the group and solve that issue and then leave once they've found a resolution for that. They don't need to commit to being a senator and coming to all these things for all their time.
Going off of what Max just said, I was also considering reducing the senators in DCGA. I'm not really sure, like Max suggested a specific number, but I'm not really sure how that's going to look like. But I was somewhat thinking of maybe making each class senators number proportional to the number of each class year, so that it's more like widespread and it's more well represented. Also, in order to improve Senate engagement, I drafted a resolution last year which didn't really get discussed a lot because of school like closing and everything. But I think a few ideas that I had was, first, what Sam kind of did last year was reaching out to first year students, like handing out brochures and like resources. So I think it's very important for us to continue doing so that more first years can get involved and be empowered to speak up during the Senate. And also, I was considering that it'd be really helpful if DCJ senators are randomly selected to represent the whole student body, maybe in Slater or somewhere now that everything's virtual, maybe through Zoom or Google Meet, so that students can freely come in, join, and voice their concerns or suggestions to DCGA. And I think another thing that I also thought of is implementing a suggestion box where it's more accessible. I know there's one in front of the DCGA office currently, but I don't think a lot of students know it. So I think it'd be much better if that thing is somewhere else where, you know, students can just pass by and know that there is the suggestion box so that they could voice their concerns whenever they want to.
Also, just because like we said this at the beginning of the meeting, but there's kind of like people trickling in. If you have any questions, feel free to DM me or Fatimah, and our like thing has like election share, so it's easy to find us. As well as if you feel comfortable putting it in the main group chat, feel free to do so. It's just if you want to message us privately, just to do that. That's also very okay. I'm going to ask Matt's question that was introduced in the chat. For the presidential candidates, so Max and Sam, you both have been in DCGA for a long time. What policies/initiatives have you enacted in your time in DCGA to empower the Black community?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's super valuable. I think the crux of the question for me is the word empower, and that has really looked like, for me, sort of stepping back and providing a platform for Black students and Black representatives to have their voices heard in DCGA. I cannot be properly in tune with the problems of Black students here, of racial profiling here. And so for me, it's about sort of quieting down and listening carefully and being attentive and supporting the policies of other people in DCGA who are there to represent BSU. So that's been one of the main ways that I do it, just because I know I can have a large presence in a room. I like to speak frequently in DCGA. Another thing that I did was, again, I had talks with Laurel Kennedy, who unfortunately has left now, so we're gonna have to start these conversations again. But I had talks with her about changing how Denison accepts students of minority groups. The Office of Multicultural Affairs is awesome, except for that it's really far away from everything else, and people don't know about it, and it's not part of the mainstream. I want to change that. I want it to be on the second floor of Slater, or in the library or something like that. I want it to be more accessible. I want Black students and all minorities on campus to have equal access and be accepted, not in just sort of like a menial way, but also in a really in a mainstream way, where it's the Office of Multicultural Affairs is something that everyone goes to, and people never ask the question, can I attend BSU meetings? The answer is yes. Yes, you can, and yes, you should.
So I'm not gonna lie, I haven't passed a lot of resolutions in my time in DCGA. I think part of that is because one of the first resolutions I worked on, I put hours and hours, weeks of work into developing it with one of my friends, Tim Dallin. It was a resolution to create a more fair pay scale on campus, and that resolution failed by one vote. And so since then, I've kind of used my position in DCGA to foster good relationships with administration. And as opposed to passing resolutions through DCGA, I've worked more so directly with administration to create change on campus. In terms of things I've done specifically relating to Matt's question, my sophomore year when I was a senator, there was some concerns brought to student government about whether or not students of color were being disproportionately written up by HRs and RAs, CAs. And so, instead of going through the bureaucracy of DCGA, as it's kind of been a cloudy process in the past few years, I reached out to Dean Farley and Dr. Crane directly and spoke with them about the statistics of those incidences. It turned out that claim that had been made to DCGA wasn't actually true, but I did want to kind of directly address the concerns from the source as opposed to kind of going through that bureaucratic process, as I said. More recently, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, I reached out to all of the presidents of the 4 Greek councils, because I think that Greek life on Denison has a real structure in place in order to create change on campus. I think Greek life is, kind of shrouded with a lot of these institutional issues, but I think that at Denison specifically, there's a lot of opportunity there to create change. So I reached out to those presidents to have a discussion surrounding how we want to implement more anti-racist policies within our organizations. That led to the development of a new executive position within my own fraternity focused on having active anti-racist policies for our chapter. And we're hoping to kind of have that spread to our national fraternity as well as the other fraternities and sororities at Denison. And I'd say even more recent than that, I've been reaching out to Jaleel, as I said at the beginning, from the Black Student Union to help realize the demands that they had given to the university. I'm not going to say that I can speak for Black students at Denison because that would be a ridiculous claim, but I am more than welcome and more than willing to work with them to kind of help realize any of those changes that they feel that need to happen on campus in the next year.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have another question that we got from someone tuning in. I'm going to have just Sarah answer this one just for the sake of time. So last year in DCGA, we had an extreme issue with attendance and a lack of engagement. Despite efforts to incorporate an engagement chair and ways to hold senators accountable, nothing really changed. Those who didn't show up to meetings lost their status as senators, but would just show up and be reinstated or didn't care as they never attended in the first place. What are things you would like to change to make DCGA engaged?
I think I kind of talked about this in the previous question, but just to kind of reiterate the main points. First thing is that I really think that it's important for us to decrease the overall size of DCGA so that, as Max mentioned, the running process becomes more competitive and the students become more empowered during DCGA meetings. And also, as I briefly mentioned, I think we should try rebuilding trust between DCGA and the students outside of DCGA by making our faces more well-known through hosting town halls over Zoom or Google Meets or Slater outside of Slater, so that students just become, first of all, more familiar with us. And also, it's important for us to implement more opportunities for students who aren't necessarily speaking up during the session to speak up in other ways. For example, we can implement more suggestion box even during DCGA meetings so that some senators can read out questions or concerns during the meeting so that we can hear more diverse voices. And also outside of DCGA meetings, we should definitely have those opportunities where students both in DCGA and outside of DCGA can engage during Senate meetings, and also just make sure that our Senate meetings are advertised properly or more efficiently, so that students know that the Senate meetings are occurring at certain times and at a specific place.
Perfect. So we talked a lot about accountability and reducing the class size of senators and everything. And so I kind of want to ask now is, how do you plan to ensure that you're accountable on your end and that you're meeting like the needs of the students and the promises that you set in your platforms?
I can go ahead on this one. For me, it's really easy to answer that question. I want to be very in front of the entire Denison body. Like I'm not ashamed of what I do. I'm not ashamed of what I stand for. I will be out front of Slater asking for people's questions, comments, and concerns. I'm going to be held accountable by the people here and by making myself visible voluntarily, like I have for my entire time here.
I guess kind of hard to answer that question because I just haven't really had to deal with holding myself accountable too much, in the sense that I just kind of naturally how I am. Regardless of whether or not I have this position, I'm going to be involved with administration because that's something I'm passionate about. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily political for those reasons. I'd say more so I'm passionate about student development, and I love working with students. I love meeting new people. And so I think that through that, I'll kind of be holding myself accountable through my own drive to kind of push myself forward and continue to pursue the needs of students that I meet. On that note, I plan to be more personal with kind of everyone I'm interacting with, and I've done that since my first days on this campus. So I think having that kind of personal connection with students is what's going to help hold me accountable, because I'll be able to kind of interact with issues that are affecting these students personally and have them affect me personally as well, and use that to hold myself accountable.
I think kind of going off of what both candidates said before, I really wouldn't have run for VP if I didn't think that I would be a good VP candidate, or even VP if I get elected. So I think my personality already kind of shows that based on my participation in DCGA over the past 2 years, I really never ever missed a single meeting, even if the circumstances were really, really, really extenuating. So I think over the past years, my participation already shows that I am a very committed person. And if I say that I'm going to do something, then I'm really the person who is doing. And also the fact that I'm running for VP, despite that I'm not one of the majority majority student population on campus, already shows that I'm confident enough to speak up, and I'm confident enough to step up for a lot of students on campus. So I think I think my personality already, if you know me or if you don't know me, I really hope that I can show that I am the person who keeps myself accountable.
Thank you, guys. All right, so we have another question that came in, and I'm going to kind of tie it into one of the ones that I already have right now. And if we can keep this one pretty brief, that way we can move on to the other ones that we have waiting. So one of the questions is, how much time do you envision committing to your president or VP role this year? And what I ask is that you guys kind of talk about different ways that you've been actively engaged in the Denison community. So talk about different organizations you've been a part of, you're continuing to be a part of, and how you plan to balance that appropriately with the role if you were to be elected.
Max, you want to take it? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'll go for it. So this is something that I've thought about a lot, and it was one of the main things that was holding me back from pursuing this position. I've since spoken with my boss in admissions. Currently, I put about 6 to 10 hours a week into admissions, and I've already, reached out to my employers there and let them know that if I do get this position, I'll be stepping back. That's an immediate 6 to 10 hours a week that I'll have freed up specifically for working in student government. But aside from that, it's kind of hard to put a specific measure on my involvement with this position, because I think it's a position that is kind of all encompassing. So I'd say 24/7, although that's kind of a corny answer, but it is something that is a part, we're students here on a residential campus. So literally every minute of our time on this campus is part of our student experience. And so to be a representative of the student experience means to be involved in working on that kind of 24/7 and bringing that energy to all my other involvements on campus as well.
Yeah, Max hit the nail on the head there. It is sort of a full-time commitment to be engaging and learning about Denison. But beyond that, I'm sort of a DCGA guy primarily. It's where I spend a lot of my time, where I spend a lot of my mental effort. If you're a friend of mine, if you know a friend of mine, they know that I care a lot about it. When I get back from the meetings, I talk about it for a while. Beyond that, I'm a Posse scholar. I was a leadership fellow last year. Since then, Posse has left. I've left leadership fellows. I'm really ready this year to dedicate myself entirely to DCGA in this presidency if I get it.
Over the past 2 years, I think I was involved in a lot of different organizations like Asian Culture Club, DKTG, the dance group, as well as Red Korean Lab. But this year, unfortunately, as I mentioned before, I lost a lot of jobs because I'm studying remotely. So now I honestly have one job, which is tutoring, and I don't even have a lot of tutors now. So that means that I can possibly contribute a lot of my hours to working for DCGA. And because I'm in a different time zone, as you can see, it's very early morning here now. So I think I can provide more hours where not only students there in the US, but also students in other parts of the world could interact with me and communicate with me.
Thank you. All right, Chris, I'm going to take this next one. How do you plan to handle the chance that a campus may become increasingly divisive as a result of the election as a prominent student leader?
That is a good question, and one that, if I'm being honest, I'm not sure I'm entirely prepared to answer, though I do think I will be prepared to handle it if it happens. And that sounds like a funny answer, but I think I need to wait to see in what ways tension develops before I can properly address it. I am quick on my feet. I think I'm a good decision maker. I think my voice is trusted, at least within DCGA, by some folks. And I hope that by, like I said earlier, continuously engaging the people on campus, I can quickly get a feel of the tension that is being felt and try to come to a resolution that is accommodating for as many people as possible, though I understand that might not be everyone in certain situations. And we sort of have to hope that it doesn't come to extremes.
So first and foremost, I lean into the fact that we are a liberal arts institution. Above all else, we're here for our education. And I think that in division, there is a lot of opportunity to kind of learn from the other side. And, that's something that I talk about a lot when I'm giving tours is, how we have the Denison Democrats and the College Republicans. And something that I'd really love to see happen this semester is those two organizations working collaboratively to create positive discussions. And I think that if we can get ahead of that, then there's not really going to be too much negative energy on campus as a result of that, because I think as Denison students, we're all prepared to have those conversations. It's just a matter of facilitating them in a healthy way. In terms of more like personal anecdote, my grandparents are incredibly conservative. This summer we had a lot of debates, and I kind of pride myself on my ability to converse with them, whereas the rest of my family just gets annoyed and kind of leaves the group chat or whatever. But I am really comfortable with having those conversations and engaging with people of opposing viewpoints. And I think that's something that's really essential for a leader on campus. And so if you kind of start that at the top and bring it down to the rest of the student body, I think that'll be the best way to handle any potential conflict that comes from this election.
I think it'd be easier to educate or prevent those conflicts rising before the conflicts happen, and I think it'd be harder for us to resolve the conflicts when they actually happen. So I think it's important for us to provide resources where students with different ideologies can interact and learn from one another, and also through like collaborative actions, and also when conflicts arise, I don't think it's like my sole decision to get involved in the conflict and try to resolve it by myself. So obviously, I think it's important for me to reach out to different administrators that could engage and could help me with resolving conflicts, as well as other members of DCGA, so that we could promote tranquility and like peace as much as we can.
So another question is, describe your ideal version of DCGA. That is like, what traits does it embody? And in 3 words or so, explain how you would make it work into like a reality.
Something that's, I guess, kind of frustrating me, obviously to no blame of anyone, but I think that we're almost focusing a little bit too much on DCGA when we should be focusing on the student body. Yes, DCGA has its issues, but DCGA isn't an exclusionary club. It's an organization that's meant to be representative of the entire student body. So if we keep kind of like focusing on like how we can increase involvement and like fix these specific problems within DCGA, as opposed to stepping back and looking at the bigger issue, which is how can we make sure students' voices are being heard by administration. I think that's kind of, I don't know if that answered the question at all, but that's kind of how I feel about DCGA in that regard.
Oh, my ideal form of DCGA, I have like a vision in my head where all the senators show up. That's important. That's like the step one. But I also want to get other people on campus showing up with different ideas, different presentations, different proposals that they worked with on with other senators. I want it to be a more lively community. You know, you walk into a DCGA meeting, you just kind of feel sad. That's not how it should be. It should be a place, a productive place where students can feel solution oriented, where they feel like they have some power, where they feel like they have a say with administration about where they live, what they eat, what they study. Like those things really matter to students. So a full room is really my vision of DCGA, a full room of DCGA, people that are directly involved in DCGA, but also people that just care about DCGA and care about the governance. That's going to be really important. 3 ways to make that, 3 words to make that possible. I'll use 2, community outreach.
Perfect, thank you. So wait, Sarah, did you get to talk or no?
Not yet.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So I think my ideal form of DCGA is definitely where all students are present, and most importantly, where students are represented equally on campus. As an international student, I always feel like, even though I'm representing the whole student body, I always feel like I somewhat should be representing the minority group, which is international students, and specifically Korean, because I mean, there aren't really a lot of Koreans on campus. But anyways, I think so in order for me to make the DCGA the most ideal form that I'm envisioning, I think it's very important for us to try to be inclusive and try to consider diverse voices, not only in DCGA, but also outside of DCGA, as well as making students empowered so that students feel comfortable speaking up during DCGA meetings, especially students who are a bit shy or nervous to speak up during Senate meetings.
Thank you. All right, so we do have a couple more that we need to get through, so I'm going to ask once again that we keep these as brief as possible. So one of our questions is, how will you make the budget process more equitable and transparent? Most students don't know where their student activity funds are being spent to begin with. So if you guys could answer that in a couple short sentences, that would be awesome.
Sorry, sorry, Sam. So, you know, I had worked on finance committee my sophomore year, and I was on the appeals committee this past year. One of the things that kind of frustrated me from my time as a member of the finance committee was the role of the liaison. And I know that our most recent finance chair did a lot of work to kind of improve that. But I think it's really important that these organizations have more of a direct connection to the finance committee, because we're in there having discussions for, you know, 4 to 6 hours or whatever a day, going over hundreds of student organization budgets. And it's really hard for those organizations to have their voices heard unless they are really knowledgeable about the process. So I think that everything we can do to kind of bring in direct representatives of those organizations to the discussions on their budgets, instead of waiting for those discussions to happen during appeals once they already didn't get their funding that they need. I think that's really essential to the budgeting process and to improve transparency.
Max, you touched on what Song had done this last year. I actually co-sponsored the bill that changed some of the budgeting rules just to make them a lot clearer. On the document before it was officially published, I left dozens of comments, just sort of questioning language, you know, pointing out contradictions, things like that. So that's what I already have done. I also think that like PR and finance need to work together a lot more, just like a lot of aspects of DCGA. Organizations need like an infographic that makes it really clear as to what the steps are. A lot of people are upset when they find out that other organizations got money that they weren't initially allotted because they didn't know appeals were a thing. They didn't know that that was a process that they could go through. That should be very clear. Appeals is a critical part of this process. So being a lot more clear about what the rules are, and making sure that student organizations feel like they have feel like they have a connection to DCGA, so that if they have questions, they have someone to ask. That person will respond quickly, and hopefully that will improve things.
I don't think this is just a finance thing. It's just like in general, we have DCGAs doing a lot of things, but students don't really know what's going on. So I know Dom was working on this, our peer chair was working on this last year, but I think it's really important that we continue developing our own website or like a platform where students can just come in and see like the resources they need. For example, like the finance tab, then they'll be able to see like what rules they need to, what procedures they have to go through in order to submit a budget or appeals. So I think creating that platform solely for DCGA could help students identify what resources they need whenever they need to.
Thank you. All right. So after this next question I'm going to ask, we have two more. So we have 10 minutes left. So we'll keep it brief. So you all said that you don't consider yourself in a position to speak for the problems faced by the Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. And as president or vice president, you would try to raise these communities' voices, give them a platform, or just listen. You've established that you've been you have been prominent and present leaders on campus during your time here. What are the concerns you have heard so far from these communities, and how do you plan on addressing these issues? So if you guys could keep it brief, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm not going to speak for them. I think their biggest concerns were outlined, specifically for the Black community, were outlined in the Black Student Union's demands. And those demands included things like more representation in faculty and administration on campus, and better funding, and use of the university's resources to help fund and make sure that students who are like prospective students in Denison have the resources that they need to look at this school and other schools and attend here without any other financial barriers.
Yeah, I think Max said it. I really want to avoid speaking out for things that I can't address directly, or that I haven't experienced directly. I know that, you know, targeting of posters has been a problem, and we've done what we can to mitigate that. We put up a camera in the elevator of Slater, like I mentioned earlier. That was because DSU posters were actually being ripped down and torn down, and we need to be attentive to microaggressions like that. If you can even call that micro, you know, that seems pretty severe to me. So just being attentive and hearing things like that when there are aggressions towards BSU or any minority communities.
I think the biggest problem that I've faced or I've heard is the lack of communication or interaction between students of color and other students on campus or faculty members. So I think it's just very important for us to, as DCGA, to provide opportunities where students from different backgrounds can interact and learn from one another. And I think one of the things that I did was last year I co-hosted a Korean dinner where students from different backgrounds, any students or faculty members, could join and learn about different cultures. So I think it's very important for us to reiterate the importance of campus organizations, not just us, campus organizations in general, consider like different options or different events where students can just learn about one another and just get engaged and to have more conversation to learn about each other.
I just want to say one more quick thing on that. Really great comment, Sarah. I just want to kind of double down on the fact, like, yes, I say like I can't speak for students of color, but I feel like a lot of times that's used as kind of a cop-out. But I think that, you know, obviously I'm not a racial minority or anything like that, but as a student of a member of the LGBTQ community, I've, like, you know, experienced somewhat similar things coming to campus in the sense that I didn't really find a strong community here when I came here. I didn't feel like I could express my identity in the ways that I wanted to. And so I have kind of similar experiences with that, and I kind of try and draw on those experiences and be cognizant of those experiences to help me understand other students' experiences without forcing them to be the ones to always constantly speak up for themselves, because that can be really exhausting. Sometimes you need someone to kind of push themselves out of their comfort zone to be the voice to administration if you need that. But I do kind of try and draw on those experiences in a lot of the things I do and push myself to be aware of those around me as much as I can.
Yeah, and actually, if I can get a second word in as well, I mean, Max, you brought to my attention sort of an important point. When I say that I can't speak for the communities, that's literally what I mean. I can't speak for the entire communities. I know how it's affected me. I'm Mexican, and one of the first experiences I had here was someone seeing my white complexion my white complexion and making a joke about the border wall and how it ought to go up and how Mexicans are bad. Like I said, I think it's, when I say that I can't speak for communities, I mean that literally. Obviously, racism is important to everyone in their own personal lives, but I think hearing overarching talks about race and what the problems are is what I can't speak to directly, and what I want communities, entire groups of people and leaders from different communities to speak out about for themselves.
Thank you. And then we're gonna end on like a proactive note and just like to kind of like sum everything back up. So what makes you the most qualified person for like the position that you're running for?
I hope that my words, my relationships within administration, my ideas, my past record, all of these things are indicators that I will give this position my all, and that I have the necessary tools to listen to the Denison community and then enact policy that will be effective and that will really help students here, and that I will try to, and I will change the culture of DCGA that is self-obsessed.
I guess I'll start answering that question by saying I don't think I'm the most qualified person on this campus for this position. I think that there are dozens and dozens of students who would do an incredible job with this position. I think that the most qualified students aren't really in positions where they can kind of take time away from their other commitments on campus to step into this position. What I would say to speak to why I think I'll do a good job with the position, I'd say my relationships on this campus, similar to what Sam was saying, through the different jobs I've had in the mailroom and admissions and the communication department. Between my two majors and my minor, I've got to interact with a lot of different students on this campus and create a lot of really positive and strong relationships that I really hope to draw on and bring to the table for this position, because that's essentially what it is. It's a representative for the student body to administration, and in order to be that representative, you need to know the student body. And I absolutely love getting to know new people. So for anyone on this call who I haven't met yet, I highly look forward to meeting you at some point. I hope you stop me and say hi in the mailroom or whatnot, start a little conversation, because that's just something that I love to do and would love to bring to this position.
The three biggest reasons why I want to be vice president, or why I think I would be one of the best candidates for vice president, are, first of all, I think that I do have a lot of experience with students as DCGA senator, policy chair, as well as the Board of Trustees screening committee, where I was able to work with administration directly. Also, secondly, I think I really do care about students, and I try to listen to students, and like Max said, I also really like meeting new people. And third, last but not least, I think it's very important for me to step up as an international student, because as far as I know, I don't think there is any Korean or even any international student who was confident enough or who was able to speak up in DCGA and step up as vice president. So I really want to take this opportunity, not only for myself, but also for future international students and future students from different backgrounds, so that I could inspire them to, step up and have the confidence to be in these meetings and to step up as the campus leader.
Thank you all very much. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you for those of you who tuned in. Just so everyone is aware, tomorrow is election day, so make your decisions by then in terms of who you want to vote for. You will get an email ballot around 7 a.m. and you will have the entire day to vote through that ballot until 7 p.m., which is when it closes. Candidates, you will be hearing from Chris and myself tomorrow. In regards to everyone else, if you are interested in running for DCGA, Chris and I will be hosting some informational meetings tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, if you are interested. And then next week will be campaign week to fulfill the remainder of the Senate. But that is it from us. Thank you, guys.
And a lot of the information for the information sessions and just in general for the campaign guidelines and everything, we'll be in touch tomorrow as well. So with the email ballot, it will have all the information for regular senators as well. So feel free to kind of take that into consideration, as well as if there were any questions that you maybe want a little bit more answered, or you want clarified answers, or you maybe like didn't get all the questions answered, please feel free to email me them, and then I'll get in touch with the candidates and then see about trying to add that into our Google Drive that is getting attached into the emailed ballot tomorrow. Well, you'll see the live recording and everything else. So feel free to just email me those by tonight.
Along with that as well, campaign platforms are on the My Denison page for DCGA. So if you want to take a closer look at the candidates' platforms, then you can find them there, as well as on our social media platforms. Thank you guys very, very much. Have a great night.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, everyone.